I have never heard that before.
Well, that's a helpful little thing. I also have a box on my screen. Do you have a box on your screen?
I don't. I have you on. Oh, it says the meeting is being recorded.
Excellent. Do I need to X that out or something?
The blue button. Apparently that is so that you know you're being recorded and can leave if you want. That must be an update. You have to hit continue or it won't let you stay in. And it's not letting me live stream either. I wonder if that's weird. Apparently YouTube did some, or Zoom did some updates this week. It's taking me to YouTube. All right, I guess we'll have to upload it because it is not streaming. Okay, good morning, everybody. I have to admit to my own frailty and failure. I know some of you are shocked that I am prone to mistakes. Maybe the most shocked person is me. But anyway, I was supposed to go get Danny and Norma this morning, and at 9:15 he texted me and was like, "Where is everybody?" And so I realized my failure at that point. And then Danny was smart enough to be like, "Yeah, I guess I could teach on Zoom." And I didn't even think about that. That's how flustered I was about it. But so everything that happens from this point on is my fault. Just so
oh, wow.
Clear.
I can't wait to say some of the things I want to say then.
Yes, if Danny teaches poorly, it is my fault. So I do, and I know some of you are going to be like, all you had to do is tell me to go get him. And I know this. I would have gone and gotten him. I'm not even preaching today. So I had nothing, literally no reason not to do this other than it just, my day just kind of went as it normally does. So, and I know your next question, who's preaching? Michael Kidd is preaching. So that answers that question. We are recording this meeting. So while it is all my fault, no matter what happens, in infamy on YouTube, it will be Danny's fault. Just to be clear. So my fault only lasts up until Danny starts talking on YouTube. So one thing I am going to ask you is, for the benefit of this class, this is a discussion type class. One of our problems with doing discussion type classes using Zoom is the fact that you guys just kind of start talking, which is how we would normally do live class. But if you could just give me some indicator that you have something you want to share, I can get you mic'd so Danny can hear you and it can be recorded.
Or you can repeat it, whatever.
Or I'll try, a hand raise, like in school. Oh yeah, even that would work. I can use verbal or nonverbal cues. So, but if I turn on both these microphones, then it floods me out. So I need to turn mine off and that one on for it to hear you. Is everybody clear? Okay. Let's start with a word of prayer and then we'll kick it off with Danny. Father God, we thank you so much for today, and we thank you for the opportunity to come together, even virtually, when people don't do what they should do and make mistakes. We thank you for this awesome avenue that we have to continue to have our class. I pray, Father, that you will bless Danny as he has prepared for this lesson. I pray that though he planned to do this in person, that you will give him a calm spirit, because I know I would be a nervous wreck, or at least tense because of it. So I pray that you'll calm his spirit and mine as well as we study this word together. I pray that this be fruitful and we all grow as a result of this, in Jesus' name. Amen. I don't know about you, Danny, but I don't do well when things don't go like I expected them. So,
well, that's sort of my life. So I'm doing fine, and I hope
Oh,
everybody
good.
else is doing good. Hey, are y'all excited over there?
Yes.
Are my Zoomers excited? I'm back with you today, Zoomers. I'm a Zoomer myself. Let's go ahead and get started with the title of today's class.
Revelation, Apocalyptic.
Pay very close attention to the title, okay, folks?
I didn't expect you to interrupt me there. But normally I'm ready for your interruptions. That one got me. Okay. Revelation, apocalyptic life lessons, overanalyzed and underexperienced.
And the opening question is?
The opening question is, what is the meaning behind the title of this lesson?
And I'm listening.
What is the meaning of the title behind this lesson? Yes, David.
Too much talk, not enough action.
Too much talk and not enough action. Good. They're all still asleep, apparently.
Yeah, but that's okay, because hopefully we'll come across that. By the way, I totally get that, whoever said that first answer, but that's not right. But although that is true for most of us most of the time, or at least for me, too much talking, not enough action. Anybody else got an idea?
My dad always said, study long, study wrong.
Study long, study wrong. We used to say that on the golf course for people who take too long to play golf. All right, let's get into this. What we're going to do today as we continue, well, let's go ahead and read a little bit more from the worksheet. I've got a little bit of a surprise for you. We will be in Revelation a bit, but we're still trying to put a cap on this conversation about what apocalyptic literature is. So I think we can have an easier time answering these next questions, Dale.
Okay. What is one of your favorite pieces of art? Favorite pieces of art? Yes. Van Gogh, Starry Night, right?
Okay, and remember, this can be sculpture, painting, literature, a movie, some of the strange things that you find in some of the strange cities that don't look like anything. You know, any of those things can be considered art these days.
So Wesley said Starry Night.
Starry Night, the song, or the painting?
Van Gogh, yeah, the painting.
Okay.
Uh,
I wish we had a picture of that, because I'm not familiar with that.
I will put it up there for you.
Well, anybody else?
I have one. No.
Okay.
The one that had all the disciples and Jesus together. I forget what.
Oh, the Last Supper.
That one right there?
Yeah, the Last Supper. Yes.
Michelangelo.
There is Starry Night. Well, I don't know why it's. Yeah, do you
Stars
like
are
it?
very dim. Or it could be me.
There we go. Well, now it's gone. Never mind. I give up. Nothing
Okay.
is going to work well.
What about the Statue of Liberty? Anybody think about that?
Statue of Liberty's good. Yeah, there's Starry Night.
There's Starry Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an awesome painting.
Then DJ said the
Last Supper.
Last Supper.
And what did you say? I'm sorry. The Vietnam Wall. The what is that called? That's called something else, right? Is it called the Vietnam Wall?
Well, it's the Vietnam Memorial.
The Vietnam Memorial?
Vietnam War Memorial, I believe is what it's called.
Ah, okay. So I'm with DJ. I like the Last Supper. I like the Thinking Man. I don't remember what that's.
That's a sculpture, yeah.
The sculpture. Yes, it's not the nakedness that I like.
I think it's called the Thinking Man. I think
Thinker.
The Thinking Man.
The thinker. I
The
wrote
Thinker. Yeah. Yes, that's
Okay.
it.
All right. Now, as we consider these different works of art, and I'm going to go ahead and interrupt because I'm sure there's other answers to the question. Dale, you and I have talked about this a little bit in Coffee and the Word, but we haven't really talked about it in class yet. One of the ways I want to suggest to you that we read the book of Revelation is the same way that we appreciate a piece of art. Any of these pieces of art that have been mentioned, well, you don't stand, for instance, in front of the Statue of Liberty and you don't say, I wonder, you see that third fold in her robe up there, right up by her shoulder, right? I wonder why that's there. We don't do that. Or with the Last Supper, there is some conversation about some of the different disciples, but it never gets to the point of saying, I wonder why that particular shade of red was used on that particular apostle's tunic. We don't do that, do we?
Don't tear it apart.
We don't. Well, what we do is we stand back and we take the piece of art into in all of its grandeur without splicing it up into little bitty pieces, and we just appreciate it because what is great art? What should great art make us do?
Feel.
Yeah, great art should make you feel something. It's the difference between poetry and prose. Poetry makes you feel something. Prose makes you think about something. And, poetry is, of course, great art as well, can be great art as well. So think in terms of apocalyptic literature and specifically Revelation. And we're going to look at, by the way, at some other little pieces of apocalyptic literature today. And think about it, not, it's been overanalyzed, but underexperienced. Boy, has Revelation been overanalyzed and underexperienced. I mean, people have pulled out over the ages, and especially over the last 150 years, this little bit and just spent and then built a whole theology around it. Or this little, what is this? This, for instance, 144,000, what does that mean? And built a whole theology around it. And times of tribulation versus times of blessing, which, by the way, did you know there are times of blessing and harmony in the book of Revelation? It's not just this big, horrible, terrible story. And so it's been overanalyzed, but underexperienced. Now there's a sort of a question that goes along with that first question about art, and get ready for this one. This is probably something you had never thought about before. And the next question is what?
Do you ever read the Bible as a form of entertainment?
And
I got a yes.
well, what's the next one that comes? That sort of go together.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah. So how many of you have ever just read the Bible as a form of entertainment? And how do you feel about that? I mean, I grab a novel. I'm reading one right now. In fact, I'm on audiobook, and I'm not doing it for any other reason but for entertainment. I don't expect it to change my life. I don't expect it to, have we ever thought that we should ever approach the Bible that way? And how do you feel about that idea?
I'm getting some head shakes.
Okay, we'll talk about the head shakes.
Couple of nods. So yeah, let's talk about the head shakes. So
To me, that's minimizing the importance.
it's minimizing the importance of the word. Okay. Anybody else?
I would say Acts is entertaining as you read it, but some of the other books are, it's not really much of a entertaining. It's just not entertaining as Acts. Because Acts kind of has a story. Like you can.
What about the Gospels?
Line.
Yeah, what about the Gospels?
What about when Jesus is standing there teaching and they pull that woman in front of him and say she was caught in adultery, and the law of Moses says we should stone her. And boy, here we are with our rocks and we're ready to go. And Jesus, after messing around with them for a little while, drawn in the dirt, says, yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. That's what the law of Moses says. So any of you that are sinless, you get to throw the first stone. Have at it. Now, I find that hugely entertaining. Am I the only one? Because what happens?
There's a difference between reading it for entertainment and being entertained in it.
Ah,
I think that's the rub, is reading it to be entertained cheapens it, but being entertained while reading it probably richens it.
all right. So I want to explore this for just a second. Why, when you plug the word entertainment in, does it cheapen it? Does it really?
Mike says no.
Depends on the definition of entertainment.
Entertaining doesn't mean it's funny or anything like that. You're doing it because you want to read something and you're not looking for the great big revelation. You're reading it. It's the Word of God. You're reading it because you want to read it.
What did you have to say, Nancy?
When I think of the word entertainment, it's something I do with my idle time. Just my relaxation time. You go to a movie, you take a walk, you go fishing. It's more, it's a selfish thing. And I don't think of when I go to the Bible, I think of it because I want to study it, because I need to study it. And it's more, I just would never think of the Bible as entertainment.
I see entertainment more as amusement. And I don't see the Bible as being amusing, although there are things that happen in the Bible that are amusing, or at least amazing. I don't view it as something that I want to get just to pass my time.
So let me tell you where this is coming from. And this is one of those things that I wanted to trot out for you guys that I've never talked about before in public. So it's not like one of the things I always teach when I teach Revelation. But y'all know that whenever I am studying the Bible, or when I'm reading the Bible, or when I'm preparing for one of these classes, that inevitably I end up in the room with those people 2,000 years ago. I end up in, if we're looking at Corinthians, 1st or 2nd Corinthians, I end up in the little house church in Corinth that received that letter, the church that was so messed up, that was divided. There were hard feelings in that room. People who were angry with each other and uncomfortable with each other. And Paul says, I don't want you to be that way. That's not the way the body of Christ is supposed to work. And I just see them looking at I see the furtive glances as the reader reads out loud the letter from Paul, who says, I understand you guys have got some divisions among you. Boy, there's no divisions in Christianity. There's no divisions in Jesus. I understand there's some sexual immorality. There's none of that in Jesus, in the disciples. There's no room for that. I understand that some of you eat meat sacrificed to idols, and some of you don't, and some of you, and both of you, look down on the others for doing it or not doing it. There's none of that in following Jesus. That's not what it's about, till he finally gets to chapter 12 or 13, where he says, look, let me see if I can paint you a picture. This love that I'm talking about is not so much based on what you feel, it's a commitment. And, and so it doesn't keep record of wrongs, and it doesn't, decide, it doesn't base itself on whether or not you can speak in tongues or you can't. And it doesn't keep up with all of your, he just goes on to say, so you've got three things. You got faith, hope, and love. Faith is absolutely, a big deal in this discipleship thing. He doesn't say there's no big deal in faith. And then you got hope, and he says that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. But you know what? Love trumps it all. Because faith and hope are going to pass away. When Jesus returns, you no longer need faith and you no longer need hope. That's what your faith and your hope are all about, the return of Christ and the resurrection of everybody. Love will continue on. So at a certain point, faith, and so I'm finding myself in that room with those people that are hearing that, those people that assembled in that room and that were angry with each other. And I think Paul's the best preacher. Well, I think Apollos is the best preacher. Well, I think Peter's the best preacher. And they've argued about that. And well, I'm more important in the church because Paul baptized me. Well, I'm more important in the church because Peter baptized me. And I can all that's been going on. And then they get this letter and I wind up in that room with them. Do you guys ever wind up in that room with them? Well, I wish you could. Hearing that for the first time and watching their reaction. Same thing is true here. I wind up in this room, wherever this letter, we have no idea where this letter that we call Revelation, where it made its first appearance. We have no idea. I know it says it's to 7 churches, and maybe in a future class I'll address that, but it came to a church in a place one time for the very first time to people, and they experienced it. And folks, many times we have read the Bible. Let's think of all the reasons that we've read the Bible over the centuries. We've read it to try to make sure we're living the way that God wants us to live. We've read it to make sure that we're in a good place considering salvation, that we're saved and not lost. We've read it for all kinds of reasons. And yes, that's all there. But if you read the book of Revelation, follow my thinking here, even those of you that don't think we should ever read the Bible for entertainment, or that it demeans it in some way. And I certainly understand where you're coming from. You read the entire book of Revelation. If we could read it just like you experienced that artwork that we've talked about, if we could read it all in one sitting, if we had the attention span for that, if we had the passion for that, and the tolerance for that, if we could do that, do you know that even in the letters to the 7 churches, I know that someone might pop up and say, well, what you're about to say doesn't apply to the 11 church. Even to the letters to the 7 churches, those are observational. And while there are times where he'll say, stop this and do that, and stop this and do that, that's the closest thing that we get in the entire book of Revelation to having read something and then we should go and do it. The rest of Revelation is 100%, and I'm going to tell you that I think a proper reading of chapter 2 and 3, which are the 7 letters, they're also experiential. The rest of the book of Revelation is meant to be read in one sitting and to make you feel something, not to make you do something. There's virtually nothing. And by the way, if you would go and read and reread the New Testament, for example, or even the Old Testament, even with the law, Deuteronomy, even the law of in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, even with that, but you take all the rest of the Old Testament and read it, there's a lot less instruction about what to do than there are examples and stories there that we should just have experience and have a feeling about and be encouraged or challenged and I'm going to suggest to you, this letter was written at the end of the first century, the book of Revelation. And Domitian was on the throne. He was the second. Nero was the first. We've talked about him. He was the second Caesar to sponsor forms of state persecution, state-sponsored persecution of Christians. And so that was either beginning to happen or happening or about to happen when the book of Revelation started showing up in Asia Minor and then throughout the rest of the churches of Christianity. And so I want you to play around with the idea that boy, when you get to certain parts, if you had been in that room with those people and listening with them to the book of Revelation, there would be times when there would be this. And there would be times when there would be this. And there would be times when there would be this, like people cheer when something great happens in a movie. These would be feelings. There would not be a time in the entire book of reading of the book of Revelation where somebody would have stopped and said, hey, we should stop right there and go and do what it says. It was to be experienced. It was to make you feel something. And apocalyptic literature is supposed to make you feel something.
So
It's like poet.
That's what you mean by entertainment.
That's what I mean by entertainment.
So yeah, I would. So experiential. It's to be read experientially.
You know, whether we like to admit it or not, Dale, and everybody else, but Dale, feel free. Let's have a conversation about this. People, how do I say this without people decide to stop being part of one church to go to another church for lots of reasons. Sometimes it's because they get crossways with somebody. But you know what? How many times have you heard this, Dale, from somebody who stopped going to church in one place, not necessarily ours, but just to stop going to church in one place, start going to church in someplace else, and they'll say this to you: I just wasn't being, what am I going to say, Dale? Fed. As if church is Luby's cafeteria, and you show up and you get your spoonfuls and you go on about the day. Where did that come from? It comes from the fact that we live in a consumer-oriented society. And by goodness, if I don't like the preacher or I don't like the style of music, and I like it better over here, I'm going over there. And you're telling me that's not got a part of the motivation for that is entertainment? I had an elder tell me one time, because the church I was working for at the time had started clapping when somebody was baptized. Now, I know all of us that are sitting in this class, we don't have any problem with that. We like it. We all clap when somebody gets baptized. This is a long time ago in a very conservative church. You know, this is back in the 80s. And for somebody started clapping when somebody was baptized, and the rest of the church, you know, not everybody by any, because some people were horribly offended when people clapped. But the elder, I remember one night it was one of those church dinners, and I was sitting across the table from him. This guy was such a good guy, such a good man. And somehow we got on the topic, and he says, I want to talk to you about this clapping during baptisms or after baptisms. I said, yes, sir. He said, so when they started doing that, when people started doing that, I started studying. I started trying to find some place in the Bible that said it wasn't good, it wasn't appropriate, it wasn't biblical, that it was a sin to clap when somebody's baptized. And he said, I've studied it and I've studied it, and I've decided that as far as God's concerned, there's nothing wrong with it.
But I don't like it.
and I don't like it. Now, I don't know if you've ever put down a book halfway through it, but you did it because you didn't like it. It wasn't entertaining you. Look, there is an aspect to what we do and to where the church that we choose to attend that is an entertainment aspect. And we need to get over it. It's part of who we are. And there is a huge component of the book of Revelation that was entertaining. If anybody needed entertained, folks, it was people who were experiencing state-sponsored persecution because of their faith. By the way, something Jesus told them would happen. You will be persecuted because of your faith. So it's another thing about apocalyptic literature. Look, okay, one other thing, and maybe we're not going to get to the rest of this, and that's fine, because maybe I'll be back next week.
You will.
Have you ever stopped to ask yourself the question, and Dale, let's talk about this, okay? And anybody else that wants to talk, but I'm picking on you because you got a microphone. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, why apocalyptic? Why did John had some things? Okay, let's start the conversation this way. Agree, disagree. John had some things he wanted to say to the church when he wrote Revelation. Yes or no?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. Now they were very, very important things. It wasn't just, hi, how you doing? What'd you have for lunch yesterday? Right?
Yes.
These were big time things. These were things he was trying to keep people from falling away because times were so hard.
Agreed.
Have you ever stopped and asked yourself this question, though? If you could sit down with John and say, John, I got a question for you about Revelation. And John would say, oh, I know you do. I've heard millions of them over the centuries, You say, no. Why did you choose to write it in an apocalyptic style? You could have told us what you wanted us to know, what you wanted them to know in that room that first time that they read the book of Revelation. You could have told them what you wanted them to know, just like Paul told everybody what he wanted in his letters. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like the gospel writers told us what they wanted us to know in their writings. But you chose this apocalyptic style. Now, why? Why did you choose that style? Now, the churchy answer is, I didn't have a choice. It's what God told me to do. And I don't have a problem with that answer. But did he have to write what we have is 21, 22 chapters of that stuff? Couldn't he have done it in a few chapters and then just gone back to regular literature? We've got that. Daniel is partially apocalyptic, but not all. Ezekiel is partially apocalyptic, but not all. Zechariah is partially apocalyptic, but not all apocalyptic. And we have little moments of apocalyptic type literature in Isaiah. It's on your worksheet today. In 2 Corinthians, it's on your worksheet today. We've got little moments, and in Genesis, it's on your worksheet today. Why, John? What do you think? Is that a reasonable question, or is that a dumb, stupid question?
I don't think it's a stupid question. I think a lot of people. So I think I'm understanding where you're kind of going with this. And, one of the things that I keep thinking about is there's a lot of times I'll have people in my office looking for a better understanding or how to deal with a crisis they're in. And it's almost always easier to do that in story form. People tend to be able to hear it when they're not the subjects. And I assume that's kind of what you're suggesting here, is that if we experience it, we'll get what John was trying to do. But if we try and break it down so far, we'll miss what John was trying to do. Is that?
But he could, well, yeah, sort of, but he could, and of course we're missing it when we dice it up and try to make it fit certain theologies that then somehow work their way into doctrine and become doctrine.
Right.
And that's what's happened with the book of Revelation. And folks, there's no doctrine in the book of Revelation. There's not a, you got to believe this, or you, I mean, that this is apocalyptic. This is written to people who already believe this. Do you hear me, folks? This is not trying to convince anybody that Jesus rose from the dead. Not one bit of it. This is not trying to convince anybody, the book of Revelation, that there's a God. There's not one word, not one bit of it. It is written to people. You ever heard the term preaching to the what?
To the choir?
To the choir. This is a book preaching to the choir. So if he's not right, now look at the look at Hebrews, the letter to the Hebrews. It's not about preaching to the choir. Well, it is, but the choir's ragged and fallen away. And the Hebrew writer, the whole point of the Hebrew book is, the letter to the Hebrews is, don't go back to Judaism. Jesus is better. Jesus is better than the law of Moses. Jesus is better than the best high priest there's ever been. Jesus is a better, everything than anything that you'll ever find in the law of Moses. The law of Moses was meant to direct you and point you in the direction of Jesus. Jesus is the fulfillment of the law. Don't go back to Judaism, even though times are hard. But that's not, that's a little bit of the lesson in Revelation, but that's not what the book of Revelation is meant to be experienced. And I'm afraid the way that it's been read by many, many people, certainly by me, and Dale, I don't know if you want to jump on this train too. I'll finish the statement, I guess.
Yeah, let me know.
It's the difference between going to Six Flags. You know that roller coaster that has the double go around and upside down thing, loop-de-loop?
That one.
That one. It's the difference between watching somebody ride it and listening to them talk about it when it's over and getting on it yourself. And I'm afraid that what I've been doing with Revelation for the vast majority of my life has been standing by and watching somebody else ride on it. And what that's cost me is all of the thrills. Ooh, dare I say that? Folks, all of the excitement, all of the discouragement that you feel when you read a good story, and the victory, the celebration of the victory that comes at more than one moment in the book. It's not just Revelation 21. There are other moments in the book of Revelation where it's time for celebration. And so what I wanted to do, if I'd been able to be with you today, and maybe this is better, maybe this turned out better, and maybe I need to be quiet and see how people are receiving this. But what I want us to do with the book of Revelation is read it and feel something. Instead of asking a question, talk about the way it makes you feel. And you say, okay, Danny, I'm way ahead of you. It makes me feel confused. No, that one's off the table. Because there are parts of the Gospel of John that should make you confused, and there are parts of the Gospel of Matthew that should make you confused, and there's certainly some of the things that Paul wrote that should make you confused. take chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians and spend some time in that.
Okay, I think you have some questioners
All right, let's go ahead.
or some thoughts. So let's let's see what they have to say. Yes.
Okay, how do you experience revelations if you've never seen a beast with a bunch of eyes, or a vial, or a seal, and so
I
on?
don't know. How do you?
By analyzing it?
No. How many of us have been to movies where we watch Superman fly through the air, or Captain Marvel go from a wimpy little guy to a great big all muscled up dude, or Thor and his hammer? And
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because
yeah,
the movie does it for us, right? And I'm pretty good at that. Dalton reads, I guess it's considered fantasy, but
right.
it's about worlds unknown. Lord of the Rings is a world unknown. When I read Lord of the Rings, or part of it, I could not paint the world. I just couldn't. Dalton painted the entire world and was disappointed when he saw the movie, because the world didn't look like the world he had created.
Right.
And so I don't have that ability. And I wonder if other people are like me, very visual in that sense. I can't build my own world. And that's what Revelation, if you were to paint it for me, like you were talking about the painting, or you were to do a live movie screen for me, that would help me a lot. So
Well, that's out there.
yes, I do know that's out there.
Well, these Hollywood movies, you can watch everything in 2 hours and you can take it all in. But if you were to make a movie of Revelations and it had everything, it might take you 50 hours to watch it. Or I mean, how long would it take? Can anybody get all of Revelation in their mind all at once, every piece of it?
So it's a Western. This also sort of addresses this question. It's a Western mentality that says you got to understand everything. That's the West, and we are Westerners. I realize that. But the people in the East, the people who wrote this and who originally experienced it, weren't bothered at all by the fact that after the first reading, they might not understand parts of it. That was fine with them. But we got to know everything about everything and how it works. And that leads us down some roads where we got to attach meanings to things that don't have that meaning.
Don't you think we do that with all the text?
Yes, I think we do, to our detriment.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
But the same process, like when I was reading Revelations for the first time,
I'm sorry.
I read Matthew several times and I was like, oh, this is talking about Matthew 24. And it might have taken the second time for me to put those two things together to realize that Revelations is referred in other chapters. But you've got to read it multiple times to get that bigger picture. What, are you never supposed to analyze it until you've already read it all?
Okay, so and Stephen, you and I had a great conversation the other day after class between church. I want to hear from somebody besides Stephen. Anybody else got anything to say?
I'm up again.
What? I didn't hear that.
He said, "I'm up again." Nobody said anything. So.
Well, I really didn't get an answer on what I've asked.
Probably no answer.
I think one of the things that, and I see some, last week, I think a lot of people got some clarity and felt like, okay, I understand what Danny's trying to get us to see. And this week I'm seeing again those same faces I saw 3 weeks ago. And so, but I think what might help is actually doing the Isaiah 6 reading and maybe even the 2 Corinthians. and then you can explain with those questions. I think that'll help a lot. So,
Well, but I wanted to take the time, and maybe I've taken too much, and I'm known for that, and I apologize. But what I do know, Dale, is that I am challenging folks to think about this Word of God in a different way than they've ever considered it before. And it's not demeaning to it. It just adds a new dimension to it, a very helpful and healthy dimension. And so you're right. Let's go ahead and see if it works with Isaiah 6.
okay. In the year that King Uzziah died.
Wait a minute before I know I'm interrupting you, but read the first. There's a little title underlined. What does it say?
It is a heavenly description of an earthly experience. Brief apocalyptic experiences. Listen, how do these apocalyptic experiences make you feel?
Now, first of all, how do you feel about that underlined statement that it is what does it say?
Heavenly description of an earthly experience. Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think that helps.
Okay, so let's that was the one other thing I wanted to add to a way to look at apocalyptic literature. All right, so let's then go ahead now, move forward. And folks, what I'm sort of asking you to do, I realize that I put the text on the worksheet. That's so you can look at it later. But what I would like you to do as Dale reads this to us is I'd like you to close your eyes and see it. And the question is, how does it make you feel? Not what questions do you have, but how does this make you feel as he reads this momentary apocalyptic experience that Isaiah is about to describe?
All right, Isaiah 6, verse 1. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings, with 2 wings that covered their faces, with 2 that covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorpost and the threshold shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, and with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar, with it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sins atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, Here am I, send me. What did you experience as you listened? That would be a good movie.
So if you were watching it as a movie,
yes,
how would you describe the experience? How would it make you feel? And I think you would feel different things at different moments in the scene.
Go ahead, Dave.
I would not be entertained. I would be like Isaiah was. He was ruined. He was repentant. He was fearful. It caused him maybe it's just the word entertainment just hits me wrong, but that's not the way that I read a text like Isaiah 6. I mean, Isaiah was not entertained by the experience. And I'm not particularly entertained when I read it because it does a similar thing to me. That I'm convicted. I'm confronted with sin. I'm confronted with the holiness of God. I'm not entertained by that.
I'm changed. I'm ruined. I'm repentant.
I certainly appreciate your perspective and your honesty. Have you ever seen a movie that made you cry,
Of course.
but you weren't entertained by the movie? See the point? I think our
At times I would say no.
definition of entertainment is too, we have, at some point in religion, we've said, we don't go to church for entertainment. Well, if you don't want to use the word entertain, I guarantee you the people that were in that room that day when they read Revelation for the first time at moments were hugely entertained.
I wouldn't use that word because those people were suffering incredible persecution. Entertainment was not a part of it. I don't believe. Not with my definition of.
Yeah, right, Mike. First line of one of the definitions of entertainment. Entertainment is a form of activity that holds the attention and interest of an audience or gives pleasure and delight. So if you read the Bible and it holds your interest, you're being entertained.
There you go. It's a wider, there's nothing wrong with it, with us being there. So one of the comments that was made was these people were suffering horribly and had terrible lives. Folks, get your minds around this. Everybody in the Roman Empire had a terrible life. Everybody, except the ones that were being sponsored by the state or that had a lot of money and were royalty, and that was about 1% or 2%. Everybody wondered where their next meal was coming from. Jesus said, in this world, you're going to have trouble, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. He could have said that to anybody almost in the Roman Empire. Now, you're right. One of the things that Jesus was trying to get his followers to see is that they were going to have all of the struggles and problems that everybody else has, plus others because they chose to follow him. But everybody in the Roman, everybody was in need of a momentary. So the way I understand entertainment is taking you out of the moment that you're currently in and putting you in a different one and a better one. And sometimes it makes you feel things that are optimistic, and sometimes it makes you feel things that are sad. But it's still, it's why we read books. It's why we go to movies. And it should be one of the reasons, let's just say that there is an opportunity for that experience when we read the book of Revelation. Just because we've got this Holy Bible thing, we put the word holy in front of it, which it is, and that takes the smile off our face.
But John's intent was not to take them out of the moment. It was to give them encouragement in the moment.
That's right.
Well, sort of.
Sort of.
I was not actually tracking with you until I read this last text, and so I want to kind of share my experience as I read that text. I don't know how many of you know this, but superhero movies started to give people hope. I mean, that's why Superman showed up. He's this creature. He's this extraterrestrial being who's come in with all goodness and things were not good. The Great Depression was happening, and the world needed something.
They didn't start as movies. They started as
comics, right?
And they all had most of them had their birth after or during World War II.
Correct.
And it was all about taking great, marvelous symbols of victory and greatness and overcoming struggle. And it had to do with World War II.
But I want to, so let me finish, because as I read the Isaiah 6 verse, so first of all, you get thrown into this scene where King Uzziah has died, and Isaiah is apparently assaulted with this vision, this thing that he can see with this horribly amazing creature, and he hears it singing, "Holy, holy is the Lord Almighty," and he realizes instantly, I don't belong here. I don't belong in this. I shouldn't be seeing this. I'm going to die. This is not good. And so he yells out, "Woe to me. I'm ruined, for I'm a man of unclean lips." But the part that happens doesn't happen, which is he doesn't get seared with a hot iron, but God's power is so magnificent that even this ruined, unclean man, God can clean up. Like that's, I think, that's extremely encouraging. When you look at that, you almost want to clap at the end of that. Like God solved the problem. And I think that's what you're saying. As we listen to Revelation, as we study Revelation, there's this heavenly thing happening that is greater than all the earthly things that are happening. And victory is certain. Right? Is that fair?
Absolutely. But if we spend so much
And
time,
I was entertained.
yeah.
And I hate that.
I remember the day, Dale, when we couldn't even have choirs from universities come in to our buildings because that was entertainment. And we had this iron wall drawn in our minds and in our theology and in our doctrine that the last thing you would ever happen in church would be entertained.
I think when we're entertained, and I think I see why you use this word, which I didn't like when you first used it.
I know, and I used it on purpose.
But I think I like this word because being entertained tears down some of our walls. We're open to hear it when we're just observing it. And as we observe it, we get convicted. In fact, it's funny because just this morning, somebody was telling me they just saw a movie that convicted them. They completely convicted them to tell people about God's love instead of about how they have failed. And, that movie did that. And the movie transported them out of the reality of what is and let them see things in a way that they couldn't see. That's entertaining. I hate that I agree with you on this. I had no intention of agreeing with you on this.
I didn't start the study out with that word in my mind. I just wound up in the room with those folks. And you can't tell me that have you ever walked out of a movie that was so good and that people were standing around in the parking lot talking about it?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, it ended in such excitement that the change was, who will I send? He goes, me, which probably wasn't the answer before this experience. And so the excitement of that was what I got. Is I'm changed, and you send me, I'm done, I'm ready.
Go ahead, David.
Perhaps it's a semantical problem that we have with entertainment.
Yeah.
Because, I would use a different language. I would use 2 Timothy, that the God-breathed scripture is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, training. And I don't put that in the same realm of entertainment.
But that can happen in entertainment.
There can be entertainment in it, but that is such a small part.
Right. Dang it, Danny.
Because a lot of the entertainment is pleasurable.
Not necessarily.
Well, that's what the definition is.
No, it captures your attention. Yeah, I don't think, in fact, some of the greatest entertainment I've ever had, I wouldn't have called pleasurable. Watching The Passion of the Christ was not what I would have called entertainment, but I was obviously wrapped with focus and
a difference of the way we view entertainment.
I think
we agree on the concept.
Yeah.
Let me remind everybody about something of our history in the United States. There was a day in the 20s and 30s, 1920s and 30s and 40s, when people who were entertainers were considered to be low class people. That's no longer the case because we've changed our view about entertainment. There was a day, sorry to use this illustration, there was a day when a professional golfer was not allowed to go into the clubhouse of the country club where their tournament was being played because they were considered to be low class. But, and just another form of entertainment. And now look at the way they're treated. Entertainment is not a bad thing. And if we could accept that one of the reasons, Dale, how good a sermon do you want to preach the next time you preach?
Yeah, I mean, I work very hard to capture people's attention.
Yeah, and there's some of that, and that's, dare I say, entertaining. If you're dull as dishwater, they ain't coming back. I don't care how true your doctrine is. It's okay, folks, for us to admit that we enjoy worship. It's okay. And these people that I keep winding up with in this room in the first century that were reading Revelation for the first time, they walked away and talked about it for weeks.
So you're way out of time. But I was definitely entertained by this lesson.
Think
It's
about
fun.
it. Let's go ahead and read the faith lessons and see if anybody will do it.
All right. Apocalyptic life lessons. Read 2 or 3 chapters of Revelation every day this week. So this is the second time we've been challenged to do this. So you're being challenged again. And I'm going to make you do something I don't normally make you do. Normally would be like, okay, if you guys are willing, would you read a couple of chapters? I'm actually going to ask you to commit to it. So if you're willing to commit to reading 2 or 3 chapters a day this week, raise your hand. All right, you're in. I'm checking on you. All right. Read it aloud with at least one person. Hands went down, Danny. Immediate. No, I'm just kidding. So commit. I do think that's, yes, let's commit to doing that. Keep a journal. Instead of questions, write down feelings, and then be ready to share your feelings next week in class. And so I am, yeah, I'm in. I want to do this. I'm excited about this. So keep a journal, write down your feelings, especially those of you who are really good at getting in touch with those feelings. Write those down, and then let's talk about it next week.
Okay, is church going to be more entertaining than Bible study was?
Probably.
Because I've never fallen asleep in Bible study, but I have fallen asleep in
Wow.
What happened?
Well, yeah, I'm not preaching today, so I have to share with you what just happened. Steve just asked me if church was going to be as entertaining as Bible study because I've never fallen asleep in Bible study, but I fall asleep in church. So let's pray. Father God, we thank you for today. We thank you for Danny and again making a way where we failed, but you didn't. You made a way for us to have this lesson and to discuss it, and maybe even you did it the way you wanted to in our failure. And so we thank you for that. I pray that that you will convict us to do the things we agreed to do today over this next week, and be ready to have an even more fruitful conversation next week about the things that we read. I praise you and love you because though we are ruined people of unclean lips, you have offered your son as our purification. And I thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Danny, you did great.
Thank you, everybody. Maybe I'm glad I wasn't there.
Vaya con Dios.
Bye-bye.